Mr. Speaker, what has come from that member, I just want to touch on, and I just was yelling out in my interjections, it is nanny state. This is what that side needs to realise. They assume that these people that are on benefits don't want to work. They assume the very worst of these people that are accessing benefits. The national government assumes that if they don't legislate for work testing, if they don't legislate with punitive measures, then those people won't get out there and work. That is nanny state. Those are the assumptions that that side of the House is making. That is the assumptions that they are making. There are two things that I want to touch on, Mr. Speaker, because I think I actually understand this a little bit more than that member over there. And there are two things that I want to refer to. Two things that I remember having been a single mother and having been on DPB myself. The first memory that I want to refer to, Mr. Burrows, is when I first went on that benefit, and even amongst my own friends, the stigma that there was with the domestic purposes benefit. And I remember at the time, because I was studying, I was a young brown mother that had gotten pregnant whilst at university, and I remember at the time thinking, I'm going to access this now, because for the majority of my life, I will be working and I will be paying very good taxes. I knew that at 20 years of age. That side of the House assumes that young mothers don't know that they don't want to do that. The other thing I remember very clearly, is being a young mother and getting on a bus with a pram, with a baby, with a bag, and watching the reactions of the people on that bus looking at me like I was the scum of the earth. And that is the stigma that I'm talking about, that the national government is perpetuating in this legislation. They are making assumptions about beneficiaries. They talk about aspiration, but they don't acknowledge that these people may actually have aspirations without the need for legislating with punitive measures to try and get them out into the workforce, as if they don't want to. The other thing that they don't acknowledge is that there are actually some people, especially some mothers, that may actually be better off staying home and looking after their children, and that it must come down to them being able to have the choice. It's about putting the measures into place to support them onto further study, if that's what they want to do, to support them onto employment and to good employment prospects, if that's what they want to do, but also if they feel that they need to be at home with their children, then supporting them to do that, rather than putting out messages to our society saying that all single parents should be out there working. Because quite frankly, even though I always knew that I was going to, even though the vast majority of the single parents that I know knew that they were going to as well, there are for some, that it may not be the appropriate choice to make, but it comes down to them. And it's quite interesting because that side of the House usually is about individual responsibility, individual choice. Individual responsibility, individual choice for the people that are like you, that are like that side of the House, but not for these people that we're discussing tonight. Now, I want to refer to a few examples from a Facebook group called Single Parents Fight Against Discrimination, It's Not Okay. A few examples of women who have put their stories on this Facebook page. Let's start with a woman called Vanessa. She said, "Thank you so much for initiating this. I am an overwhelmed single mum, and whilst angry about the ludicrousy of this policy, haven't known what to do about it. I'm actually on the DPB caring for an adult daughter with a rare disorder and have now lost my ability to access the training incentive allowance. Even with the training incentive allowance, it is stressful and never ever enough. I am doing one paper at a time as it's all I can afford. The national government's policies seem to be so draconian, trying to get us back to work, yet taking away the rug from under our feet." Now, one paper a semester, and having worked at the university, I think back to, say, the average arts degree, which is about 24 courses over 3 years. Now, if this person's, say, doing an arts degree, she can expect to finish that degree in 12 years at the rate she's going at, because she's not supported by our welfare system to actually take up full-time study, because that side of the House cut the training incentive allowance. Now, the legislation that we're talking about here are the welfare reforms, but on the study front, what that side of the House is denying women like this is the opportunity to actually pathway into higher level tertiary study, because no longer will they be able to get support from Work and Income New Zealand if they want to take up level 1, 2 or 3. Now, for many people, jumping into level 4 would be quite a huge jump, particularly if they got no secondary school qualifications. But common sense doesn't prevail for that side of the House. They don't understand that actually they should be supporting people to take up study at all levels because of the necessary requirements in terms of staircasing through. I'm going to give you another example of someone that commented on this page. A woman called Hayley. She said, currently studying part-time towards my degree. If I'd gone full-time, I would have had less than $30 a week for food, cleaning products and doctor's bills left after childcare costs. We are not on an equal footing when it comes to higher education. She's talking about sole parents. I remember very clearly last year when we were debating the cuts to the training incentive allowance, and we were questioning the Minister of Social Development, and she said times had changed and that these women that are sole parents are now on an equal, if they can get to university, they're on an equal footing with everybody else. Well, that's absolute rubbish. I've seen it from having provided support to students at the university. These single parents have a lot more to contend with than than the vast majority of 18-year-old students. When they're trying to balance not only their study but a household by themselves, they need as much support as possible. They are not on equal footing, and there does need to be some equity considerations discussed and considered by that side of the House. And one more example I want to read from this Facebook page called Single Parents Fight Against Discrimination, It's Not Okay, is by a woman called Debbie. She said, thanks for starting this group, guys. I'm a single working mum. I'm really angry and upset about Mr Dunn's proposed income splitting bill, which would directly discriminate against working single mums like me, whilst giving more play money to the Remuera housewives to spend on tennis and getting their nails done and to pay for their coffees, over which they could badmouth women on the DPB, oblivious to the poverty that many single mums suffer. We have to do something. Now, those are real stories. Those are the real people that suffer at the hands of bad legislation. And Mr Garrett saying, yeah, real people on Facebook. Well, actually, there's a lot of real people on Facebook. A lot of them would actually be slightly fearful of coming out and telling their stories publicly because of what they witnessed with the Minister of Social Development dragging those two women through the mud last year, or earlier this year, with regards to their stories. So I know that Mr Burrows is looking over here and thinking that we're acting like that side of the House doesn't care, that we're acting on this side of the House like that side of the House doesn't have any compassion or heart. But when you put through legislation like this and you perpetuate the stigma that already exists for these groups of people that we are dealing with, that this legislation will affect, then of course we're going to think that. Of course we're going to think, where is the compassion? There's absolutely no reason to do this. What has annoyed me to no end, actually, has been when those unemployment rates came out 2 weeks ago and the country got to see how badly this government were doing, what did we see? We saw the Minister of Social Development and the Prime Minister get out there and talk up these welfare reforms, even more so than what they have ever done before. And that side of the House knows why. It's about shifting the lens, rediverting the attention onto the beneficiaries so that Kiwis blame them rather than blaming the government for a job badly done, for the fact that the government has had no plan, for the fact that the government has created no jobs, and that this country is worse off than what it was 22 months ago before this government took office. We don't support this bill. We support these very real people that are out there struggling. We don't support the beneficiary bashing that's going on. We don't support the lack of compassion that side of the House is expressing to some very vulnerable New Zealanders who are struggling at the moment. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker.